The process of learning second language, known as second language acquisition, is a complex journey influenced by various factors, with the first language playing a crucial role while learning a new language can be challenging. It's important to remember that it is a natural process that everyone goes through regardless of their native language. Just like babies learn their first language by listening, imitating, eventually producing words, individual learning a second language go through similar stages of acquisition. So, second language learning is a complex phenomenon. There, we see that second language learning might be affected by several factors. Previous classes, we have understood that the learner's age, learner's motivation, learner's uh, learner's cognitive style, learner's learning style can play a vital role in case of learning second language acquisition. In case of our today's class, we will try to understand what might be the effect the learner's first language can put in case of learning second language. That we uh, have watched a video, that means the first language that is in your brain, that is very sticky, that is glued with a very solid stick, একটা আঠা দিয়ে আপনার ব্রেনের মধ্যে স্টার্ট হয়ে আছে ওটা the first language system. And for this reason, whenever you will go to learn a second language, that will create, that means your first language will create some influence. What are the influence? We have got another idea about interlanguage in this regard, and that is a system that is not, that is the gap between first language and the target language. And this interlanguage is not simply a mix of two languages, rather a complete system with own rules and patterns. So interlanguage creates, again, for the influence of the first language and also for the cause of the different roles of the second language. So, of course, for the effect of the learner's first language, we get a new language system that is interlanguage. And the learner are exposed to the target language, then interlanguage gradually evolves, becoming more refined and closer to the target language. So whenever they will be going through their language learning journey. So interlanguage is a different language system, but gradually the second language learner will go close to their first second language. In which way? That means his or her interlanguage will be quite similar to the target language in this scenario. So how the influence of L1 on SLA? That is first uh, way of the role of first language in case of learning the second language. That way is called language transfer. It can manifest in both positive and negative ways. Positive transfer occurs when similarities between L1 and the target language facilitate learning. Okay, so you watched in the video that many similar words will be there in case of first language and second language. In Bangla, we see chairs, and the same word we see in English. Okay, so in that case, whenever a person, Bangla speaking learner, will go to learn the second language, so the chair, table, televisions, uh, these are the things that is quite similar in the target language. So what the first learner, second language learner will do? the first language learner will identify that yes, chair is in বাংলা ভাষায় চেয়ার শব্দটা আছে, ইংরেজিতে এটাকে চেয়ারই বলা। বাংলা ভাষায় টেবিল শব্দটা আছে, ইংরেজিতে এটাকে টেবিল বলা। টেলিভিশন শব্দটা আছে, টিভি আছে, সো এটাকে বলা হয় ফ্রিজ আছে, ফ্রিজ ইংরেজিতে একই শব্দ। তাহলে এখানে শুধু ফার্স্ট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নার কি করে, তার প্রথম ভাষা সেটাকে ট্রান্সফার করে ইংরেজি ভাষায়। দ্যাট ইজ কল্ড দ্য পজিটিভ ট্রান্সফার। ইন দিস রিগার্ড দ্য রোল অফ ফার্স্ট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ will be facilitating the second language learning scenario. And we see another examples over here, that if a Spanish speaker is learning Portuguese, they might find it easier to learn certain grammatical structure. So I have said about some word, but in the video clip, we have also understood that there is a difference between the sound pattern. Okay, just like uh, in Bangla literature, we see in Bangla language, we see 49 letters, and out of them 11 vowels and 39 or 38 consonant. But in case of English letters, English alphabet, we see 5 vowels and 21 consonant. And if you get the phonemes, that means the phonetic transcription of the letters, that you will see vowels, consonants will be there, but that is not quite similar to Bangla language. বাংলা ভাষায় আমাদের হ্রস্বইকার দীর্ঘিকার আছে, তাদের সেখানে লং উ শর্ট উ আছে ইংরেজি, কিন্তু বাংলা ভাষায় তালবস্য দন্তস্ব, হ্যাঁ, তাদেরও এরকম প্যাটার্ন আছে। কিছু কিছু জিনিস যেমন ইংরেজি ভাষায় কোনো ঘ সাউন্ড নাই। ওকে, সো এই জন্য আমরা একটা উচ্চারণ করতে যাই যে GHOST, সেটাকে আমরা বলি ঘোস্ট। কেন ঘোস্ট বলি? যে আপনি বাংলা ভাষায় যে ঘ সাউন্ডটা শিখেছেন, এটা কি আপনি এখানে অ্যাপ্লাই করেন। কেন আপনি অ্যাপ্লাই করেন? এই যে ঘ শব্দটা আপনি শুনেছেন, ঘুড়ি, ঘোড়া, হ্যাঁ, ঘোড়া গাড়ি, এটা আপনার মাথার মধ্যে গেঁথে আছে। যখন আপনি নতুন একটা ওয়ার্ড শিখতে গিয়েছেন ইংরেজি ভাষায়, তখন সেই জিও কে আপনি ঘোস্ট বলে হচ্ছে, কিন্তু ইংরেজিতে এই ঘ সাউন্ডটাই নেই। সো সেখানে সেই ভুলটা তারা করে, এই জন্য সেখানে কি আছে গ গ GHOST, that would be the ghost. Okay, so in case of pronunciation, that will create problem, and also in case of word, that I have said that the many words are similar in Bangla and English languages, so that will facilitate the second language learning. Other, it will create problem. Okay, and that is called negative transfer. We see an example, another word, the Spanish speaker and the learning Portuguese, they find it easier to learn certain grammatical structure due to the similarities between two languages. So Spanish and the Portuguese, they have the two languages, but their structure are quite similar. In this case, when the Spanish speaker will go to learn Portuguese language, he or she will get benefits, and that is called the positive transfers. And negative transfer can occur when differences between the language lead to error or misunderstanding. Okay, in many parts of Bangladesh as well, they are using their dialect. চিটাগাংয়ের ভাষা আমরা অনেকটাই বুঝি না, সিলেটের ভাষা আমরা অনেকটাই বুঝি না, কিন্তু কেন? তারা তো বাংলা ভাষাতেই কথা বলছে, তাহলে কেন বুঝি না? এটা হলো তাদের ডায়ালেক্টের কারণে। সেই ডায়ালেক্টটা হচ্ছে ডিফারেন্ট। সেরকম যদি কোনো ভাষাভাষী যে কিনা একজন লার্নার, when he will go to learn a second language, if the first language is different from the second language, that will create in structure, in pronunciation, and in other perspectives, that will create a transfer, but that transfer will negative transfer. For instance, A French speaker learning English might mistakenly use the word good instead of well, because the two words have similar meaning in French. Okay. So the two words, good and well, similar words so that means what might be similar and what my pronunciation might be similar, structure might be similar, pronunciation might be similar, okay, sentence pattern might be similar or dissimilar. So if the sentence pattern and spelling and the pronunciation becomes quite similar, that would create positive transfer. That will help first language learner to learn the second language. And if there are differences, that would be the negative transfer in case of learning the second language. So impact of L1 on SL extend beyond the grammar and vocabulary. It can also influence pronunciation, intonation, even cultural understanding. So the difference, the role of the first language, that means first language will not create problem in case of grammar and vocabulary. Rather, it will create pronunciation, intonation, and even the cultural understanding. Cultural understanding, for pronunciation and intonation we have understood. That means actually the different pronunciation will be there. Just I have given the examples. The sound "ka" is not present in case of English sounds, and sound go is present there. Okay. But in case of cultural understanding, for example, a learner's L1 accent might persist in their second language, or they might struggle to understand the cultural nuances nuances that are specific to the target languages. This highlights the importance of considering the cultural context of the target language when learning a new language. Okay. Some uh, culture may like something, or some culture may not like something. So that is called cultural taboo or cultural nuisance. Okay. So that cultural consideration can also play a vital role in case of learning second language. So first language learners, intonation, grammar, vocabulary, even the cultural understanding might play a role in case of learning the second language. Either it may be positive or it may be second language. And research on SLA has explored the relative importance of various factors, including language input, listening, reading, seeing, language output, speaking, writing, singing. So the comprehensible input hypothesis suggests that the learners acquire language by being exposed to input they can understand, while the comprehensible output hypothesis emphasizes the importance of producing language in order to learn it. So interaction hypothesis proposes the interaction between learner and the native speakers is crucial for the language acquisition. So in that case, we can say the first language play a vital role in case of second language learning. So how that problem can be eradicated? So it is suggested that the first language learner should work with the second language learner, especially the native speakers. If the first language learner communicates with or talks with the native speakers, then the spelling, pronunciation, and cultural gap will be eradicated, and language learning will be easy, and the second language learning will be easy. Researchers have debated on the role of explicit knowledge, conscious awareness of the roles, versus implicit knowledge, automatic use of roles. Some theories suggest that explicit learning is essential for implicit learning, while others argue that the two are largely independent. Regardless of the specific theoretical perspectives, it is clear that both explicit and implicit knowledge play a role in case of in the complex process of second language acquisition. So the structure roles and the implicit role, explicit role, uh, that is the difference between vocabulary, pronunciation, intonation, that are the explicit. And implicit knowledge, that is the cultural, that we can see. Uh, that is the implicit differences between two language. That means the cultural difference. So both are crucial in case of learning the second language. So the first language learning is culture, and everything will play vital role in case of learning second language. So understanding the role of L1 in SLA is crucial both by language learners and educators, and for this region. And by recognizing the influence of L1, learner can be more aware of the potential challenges and develop strategies to overcome them. Educator can also use this knowledge to create more effective teaching materials and methods that cater to the specific needs of the learners with different L1 backgrounds. So ultimately, recognizing the influence of L1 can lead to the more effective and enriching language learning experience. So if you can understand this, that is in a second language learning can be more effective and beautiful. Okay. So in the post-war years in 1960, there was a strong assumption that is the most of the difficulties facing by the L2 learners were imposed by his or her first language. So understanding everything, that is, it is assumed that ধারণা করা হচ্ছে যে দ্বিতীয় ভাষা শেখার ক্ষেত্রে ফার্স্ট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজই ভুল করার প্রকৃত কারণ এবং প্রকৃত প্রধানতম কারণ এটা ধারণা করা হলো, and this is assumed that where there were differences between L1 and L2, the learners L1 knowledge would interfere with the L2, and where the L1 and L2 was similar, L1 would actively aid L2 learning, that we have taught earlier in case of language, and the process that held responsible for this was called language transfer. So that means first language data will be transferred to the second language learning scenario, that is called language transfer. Okay. In the case of similarities between 1-2, that is the positive transfer, okay, and also the positive transfer. We have also said this. Teachers were encouraged to focus their teaching on the areas of difficulty created by negative transfer, okay, especially what might be the negative transfer in case of learning the second language. So we have to think about that. And in order to identify the areas of difficulty, a process called contrastive analysis was developed. Contrastive analysis, we had been talking this kind of analysis at the time of taking class on error analysis. Error analysis, that means, and the role of first language, in order to identify the role of the first language in case of making errors, contrastive analysis can be applied. And how that can be applied? That means, suppose if you see the learner will making mistakes. Okay, look here, learner will okay, so the first language will create in case of speaking, writing, and singing. Okay, so the first language will create influence on the speaking and writing and singing of the target language. So if we see that a learner has made mistakes in his writing, you can identify that what types of mistake. যদি রাইটিং এর মধ্যে যদি স্ট্রাকচারে ভুল করে, তাহলে সেই স্ট্রাকচারটা হলো তার মাতৃভাষায় আছে কিনা, থাকলে কিভাবে আছে, এবং যদি ডিফারেন্টলি থাকে তাহলে আমরা বলতে পারি যে হচ্ছে এই মাতৃভাষার স্ট্রাকচার এবং টার্গেট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজের স্ট্রাকচার আলাদা, বিধায় এই ভুলটা উনি করেছেন। স্পেলিং এ যদি আমরা ভুল দেখতে পাই, সো সেক্ষেত্রে আমরা সেটা বলতে পারি যে এই অ্যালফাবেটটা সেখানে উনি ব্যবহার মাতৃভাষায় ছিল না এবং টার্গেট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজে আছে, বিধায় উনি এই ভুলটা করছেন। স্পিকিং এর ক্ষেত্রে যদি আমরা দেখি যে কোনো সেকেন্ড ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ লার্নার কোনো একটা স্পেসিফিক ওয়ার্ডের উচ্চারণ ভুল করছে, তখন সেই ভুলটাকে অ্যানালিসিস করব আমরা কিভাবে, যে সেই ভুলটা, সেই শব্দটা এবং সেই উচ্চারণটা স্পেসিফিক একটা লেটারের উচ্চারণ অথবা একটা শব্দের উচ্চারণ, এই লেটারের উচ্চারণটা, এই ফনিংটা তার মাতৃভাষায় আছে কিনা। যদি মিসিং থাকে তাহলে উনি সেই ভাষাটা উচ্চারণ করতে পারবে না। ওকে, সো in this process we can understand the mistakes and the errors done by the first by the second language learners through this contrastive analysis. Yep. So so that will create problem. It was not until 1960 decades that the contrastive analysis hypothesis was submitted to empirical investigation. So they have said that is uh, in 1973 and 1974, Dule and Bhatt, these two persons raised grave doubts about the negative transfer as a major factor of the process of SLA. But next time we have understood that uh, especially by the comment of Julian Hart, that actually first language সবসময় সেকেন্ড ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ শেখার ক্ষেত্রে প্রতিবন্ধকতা তৈরি করে, এই মতের সাথে এই ডুলে এন্ড বার্ড এরা এগ্রি করলেন না। A large proportion of grammatical errors could not be explained by L1 interference. তাহলে আমরা কি, আমরা যদি এভাবে ধরো বলি যে হলো মাতৃভাষায় দ্বিতীয় ভাষার ক্ষেত্রে শেখার ক্ষেত্রে ভুলগুলো তৈরি করে, হ্যাঁ, এবং এতক্ষণ পর্যন্ত আমরা জেনে আসলাম। কিন্তু এখানে ডুলে এবং বার্ড বলছে যে তার সবকিছু হয় না, এবং সেক্ষেত্রে কেন এই ভুলগুলো হয়, ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ট্রান্সফার অথবা ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইন্টারফিয়ারেন্সের কারণে। হোয়াট ইজ দ্যাট? ইজ দ্য ফার্স্ট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ ইন্টারফিয়ার্স or the first language transfer, but couldn't be explained by L1. কিছু ভুল লার্নার্সরা করে যেটা আসলে এই L1 ইন্টারফিয়ারেন্স দ্বারা হচ্ছে এক্সপ্লেন করা যায় না। যখন করা যাবে না তখন তাহলে ফার্স্ট ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজই হচ্ছে সেকেন্ড ল্যাঙ্গুয়েজ শেখার ক্ষেত্রে যে ভুলগুলো তৈরি করে সেই তত্ত্বটাও খুব সঠিক না। ওকে, সো দ্যাট ইজ অ্যানাদার হাইপোথেসিস। As a result of such studies, the role of the first language was played down and contrastive analysis became less fashionable. Okay, so uh, uh, okay, so in order to challenge this view of language learning, it was necessary to demonstrate that the old habit of the L2 didn't get in the way of learning the new habits of L2. And hence, the attempt to show that L2 errors are not predominantly the result of interference. So here, with that hypothesis, we can say that all L2 errors cannot be occurred due to the interference of the first language. Uh, So then what might be the cause? That তাহলে দ্বিতীয় ভাষা শেখার ক্ষেত্রে ভুল হয় কেন? So here we can see another, that for instance, learners may not transfer L1 roles into the L2, but may avoid using those roles and that are absent in their L1 system. Actually, in that case, so if first language creates no problem in case of the learning second language, so why second language learner will create mistakes or errors? Here there is a hypothesis that for the cause of that the second language learner will not apply the rules of the target language which are absent in their first language. For this reason, the errors are creating in case of second language learners. Okay, so if we see, but here there is a suggestion over here. So one of the assumption of the contrastive analysis hypothesis was that Learners with different L1s would learn a L2 in a different ways. As a result, negative transfer imposing different kind of difficulty. Challenging to contrastive analysis hypothesis led to the consideration of the possibility of the L2 learners followed a universal role in acquiring L2. So in that case, so first language becomes responsible for the second language learning or not. So how such kind of uh, errors can be eradicated in case of learning the second language journey, in case of learning second language? Okay, so here there is a suggestion that if the learners follow the natural root development, that means every language will have some natural root, grammar, structure, and vocabulary. Okay, following the natural root. Okay, if the learner uh, tries to learn a second language, then the problem will not create. That is, all learners, irrespective of their L2, learn the grammar of the L2 in a fixed order. Okay, so in every um, second language learning scenario, in every language, we see alphabet, then word, vocabulary, pronunciation pattern, intonation pattern, and also the structure. Okay, so these are the natural root or natural phenomena of every language. So it is advisable that if we if the second language learner play the natural root development, if the second language learners concentrate on the natural root development of the target language, then all the mistakes will be done. So we can conclude in such a way that first language and this hypothesis can also be called that L2 and L1 hypothesis was investigated in two different ways. That one was um, the one was through the analysis of the learner's errors and samples of the language learners were collected and that examined in order to discover the different types of error in language modes. So we can say in such a way that that means it was assumed initially that the first language is responsible for the second language learner's mistakes. That means first language play a vital role in case of the learning second language. Okay, so here we see that why such kind of mistake problems created. So it is assumed that it is for the language transfer. That means in first language, the learner has learned his or her first language grammar, vocabulary, structure, and rules, which are sticky and which are inscribed and preserved in the first language learner's brain. And whenever he or she will go to learn a second language, that uh, the learner's first language will create mistake. And why such kind of mistakes will create? So these mistakes will create with a process. That process is called transfer or interference. Transfer means that means the first language learner, the second language learner will carry his or her first language grammar, vocabulary, and structure to in his second language learning. And for this reason, he or she will make some mistakes. Rather, if there is a similarity between the first language and the target language, there will be the positive transfer. If there is a dissimilarity between first language and the second language, there will be the negative transfer. But next time, we see another hypothesis, that is Dule and Bard. They said that actually we observe that many errors made by the second language learners that are not influenced from the first language. So in that case, it is advised, that is, if the second language learner follow the natural root development of language learning, then second language learning journey will be successful and learning will be effective. Okay, so we can say in such a way that, of course, second language learning uh, will be important for the first language learner, and if we follow this rule, natural root development, that is every language will have grammar, vocabulary, structure, alphabet. So if you follow this natural route and gradually, if we started that rule minorly, then first language might not create any problem. Rather, language learning will be successful for every learners. Okay, so that is about our first half class. That is the role of first language in case of uh, learning the second language or second language acquisition. Okay.